Some amazing players who have in the past put up some amazing numbers on the field. But, of course, with that being said, teams gotta be really careful about who they're signing.
It's always in the cards. I spend my entire offseason in Seattle. That's where I live. That's where my family is. Pete and I have had conversations throughout the offseason.
Hundreds of millions of dollars will soon be handed out by 32 NFL front offices. But GMs should proceed with caution when it comes to these 10 big-name free agents. Antonio Brown. This one really doesn't need much explanation. Antonio Brown has been employed by 4 different NFL teams, every single tenure ending in controversy and bitterness. AB promised to behave when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave him a chance in the midst of the 2020 season. Despite his well-documented off-the-field issues, the Bucs were fine dealing with the public backlash. Brown was an integral part of the Bucs Super Bowl run that year, and the front office rewarded him with another new one-year pact heading into 2021. It was going well. But then, you may recall, the guy took off his jersey and danced his way out of MetLife Stadium during the Bucs' Week 17 road game against the New York Jets. Brown claimed that Bruce Arians wanted him to play through an ankle injury, which led to AB's latest blow-up. The Bucs had no choice but to release Brown, who probably could have been cut following his 3-game suspension for providing a fake vaccination card prior to the season. You get the point though. If Tom Brady in a championship ring couldn't keep Brown happy, nothing will. Nobody in the league should give Brown another chance. It's time for him to step away from the game and focus on his own well-being. Any team that signs AB is just asking for more unnecessary distractions. And then we'll hear the good old excuse, "We trusted him and thought he was a changed man." Blah, blah, blah. Not here for it. JADEVEON CLOWNEY. If a team out there can land Clowney on a short-term deal, hey, we're all for it. But any club who signs Clowney long-term with the belief that he'll put up monster sack totals, well, we wish you luck. The top selection of the 2014 draft has played for 4 teams thus far. He was a star for the Houston Texans and a productive pass rusher last season for the Cleveland Browns. He was a flop, however, for the Seattle Seahawks and Tennessee Titans. 3 sacks in Seattle, 0 in the Music City. And Clowney would be best suited to re-up in Cleveland, where he was a solid complement to Myles Garrett. But given his baffling up-and-down production, this isn't a guy that teams should be throwing big bucks at. Especially when you consider the number of other elite pass rushers on the market. Guys like Von Miller, Chandler Jones, Emmanuel Ogbah, Hassan Reddick, Calais Campbell, and Tarek Barnett, just to name a few. Richard Sherman. The likely future Hall of Famer returned to his All-Pro form with the San Francisco 49ers in 2019. There was hope that Sherman would play at a high level for a few more seasons, but Father Time has quickly caught up to the 5-time Pro Bowler. Injuries sadly limited Sherman to just 5 games in 2020, his final season with the 49ers. A string of injuries to starting cornerbacks left the Buccaneers empty-handed, and they wound up signing the former Legion of Boom star to help fill the void. Once again, injuries got the best of Sherman, as he was limited to just 5 contests in 2021. And even when he was on the field, he was a liability in the secondary. PFF graded him at 53.3 in those contests, and Sherman allowed a 70.6 completion percentage when targeted. Given his age, injury history, and declining play, it's safe to say that Sherman isn't starting caliber anymore. Both the free agent market and the draft offer plenty of quality cornerbacks, so any team that is even considering Sherman would be advised to look elsewhere first. His days as a feared lockdown corner are far behind him. Le'Veon Bell. There was hope that the former Pittsburgh Steelers superstar would reemerge after freeing himself from the dumpster fire Jets during the 2020 season. But nope, Bell just couldn't get much of anything going when the Kansas City Chiefs picked him up during the season. The Baltimore Ravens are renowned for their success with reclamation projects, but even they couldn't get Bell to turn back the clock in 2021. A brief stint with the defending champion Bucs didn't yield a whole lot either. Bell isn't even a quality backup anymore. He's a fine short-term addition if you need depth at the position and want to create some competition. But every year, it seems like 1 or 2 running backs get overpaid in free agency for past production. You can't change the past, but yeah, Bell should have just stayed with the Steelers when they offered him a fair contract offer 4 years ago. His career has not been the same since he sat out the entire 2018 season. The burst and explosiveness just isn't there anymore. Teams would be wise to pass on Bell and find a better, even cheaper option elsewhere. Nate Solder. The New York Giants didn't get their money's worth when they handed Solder a 4-year, $62 million contract in 2018. The contract seemed overly generous at the time, but the deal was a massive flop for the G-men. Their never-ending problems on the offensive line just kept getting worse and worse during Solder's tenure there. According to PFF, Solder allowed 6 sacks and took the same number of penalties in the 2021 season. He didn't play in 2020, having decided to opt out for the season, but Solder was even worse in 2019, allowing a whopping 11 sacks while taking 5 penalties. The only decent landing spot for Solder as a starter is New England. Bill Belichick and company did wonders with him. But, stop us if you heard this one before, Solder's play regressed after he left Foxborough. If a team wants to sign Solder for some added depth, by all means, but don't overpay for this guy based on the success he had with the Patriots way back in the day. The Giants found that out the hard way. Andy Dalton. The Chicago Bears were foolish to think that Andy Dalton would be a QB1. Who else remembers that tweet? It was only a matter of time until Justin Fields replaced Dalton, who finished 2021 with 8 touchdowns and 9 picks in 8 appearances. There are several QB-needy teams out there who may freak out and sign Dalton anyway. Washington Commanders, Houston Texans, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Carolina Panthers all entered the offseason in need of a new starting quarterback. We don't mind the idea of signing Dalton for a backup role, but come on now, based on what we've seen from him over the past 2 seasons, who's to think the Red Rocket can be a short-term starter at this point of his career? Any team that even thinks of going into 2022 with Dalton as their starter can kiss their season goodbye. O.J. Howard. The 2017 first-round pick was one of those guys where you kept telling yourself, okay, this is the year he breaks out. Didn't happen in year 1 or in 2018. Didn't happen after Bruce Arians arrived as head coach in 2019. Didn't happen with Tom Brady. And with that, it's time to finally accept the fact that Howard is a depth piece and nothing else. He's only surpassed 500 receiving yards once in his career, and that was back in 2018. He's never topped 34 receptions in a season either. Some teams out there will be interested in signing Howard with the hope that they can finally unlock his potential once and for all. But if Howard couldn't make it work with Tom Brady as his quarterback, well, what makes you think it's gonna work elsewhere? Sadly, it's just not meant to be. T.Y. Hilton. Doesn't seem that long ago where Hilton was one of the game's most explosive deep threats. Truth is though, he hasn't been a Pro Bowler since 2017, and his last 1,000-yard season was in 2018. Obviously, Hilton just hasn't been the same player without Andrew Luck. Not that the Colts have had world-class quarterback play since Luck's retirement though. In his prime, speed was far and away Hilton's most valuable asset. He was able to get behind the secondary with relative ease, but as injuries and age have caught up to him, that lightning-quick burst has gradually vanished. Yes, he missed 7 games in 2021, but Hilton wasn't exactly much of an impact player when he was on the field, averaging a career-low 33.1 receiving yards per game. That's just not gonna cut it. Because he's a household name, it wouldn't be surprising to see Hilton land a multi-year deal on the open market. But if he does, whoever gives it to him can expect that contract to come with some buyer's remorse. Hilton can still play, but he's better used as a situational wideout. He is hardly a starting caliber option anymore. He is not the same guy that frightened opposing cornerbacks for years. Receiver-needy teams are so much better off just looking at cheaper, faster options in the draft. Eric Fisher. The first overall selection of the 2013 draft doesn't look to be the same following that unfortunate Achilles tear in the 2020 AFC Championship game. The Kansas City Chiefs decided to release Fisher, clearing cap room to afford Orlando Brown Jr. and Joe Thuney's high price tags. The Colts decided to take a chance on Fisher, inking him to a 1-year deal. It was a low-risk, potentially high-reward move, but it didn't pay off, as Fisher allowed 7 sacks while taking 8 penalties on 874 offensive snaps, per PFF. It's one thing to be past your prime and still starting caliber, but in 2021, Fisher wasn't even starting caliber. He caught a bad break, but it's really difficult for an offensive lineman, especially on the wrong side of 30, to fully recover from an injury like an Achilles tear. Signing Fisher to a low-risk contract is one thing, but his 2021 season with Indianapolis shows that he's a liability on the offensive line. Even playing alongside all those Pro Bowlers last season didn't help him return to form, so teams would be smart not to commit too much to Fisher this offseason. Anthony Barr. The Jets are probably thrilled that Anthony Barr backed out of an agreement they had on a multi-year deal in 2019 that would have paid him $15 million annually. Barr decided to return to the Minnesota Vikings, the only NFL team he had ever known. Injuries and a decline in production, however, made for a disappointing final 3 years for the linebacker in Mini. Because he's a 4-time Pro Bowler, it's easy to envision Barr landing a lucrative deal worth over $10 million annually. I mean, CJ Mosley, who isn't even as good as Barr, got $85 million for 5 years from the Jets in 2019. Barr hasn't played all 16 games in a season since 2017. His last Pro Bowl nod was in 2018. PFF graded him at 60.6 in 2019, 47.5 in just 2 games in 2020, and 63.9 in 2021. Barr is one of those guys who should get a cheap 1-year prove-it deal. A well-coached team like the New England Patriots or Pittsburgh Steelers might help him to regain that Pro Bowl form. But, keyword there, might. A prove-it deal probably isn't gonna happen. Barr is a hot candidate to get heavily overpaid for past production. NFL general managers do this all the time. If that does happen, don't say we didn't warn ya. But which other players should teams avoid in 2022 NFL free agency? Join us in the comments section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.